Hi guys, welcome to Pax Europiana. Here, Günther Fellinger. Thanks a lot for listening to my many videos in 2021. This is the first one for 2022. I welcome you very much to Pax Europiana, the podcast about peace and prosperity. I do a lot of audio podcasts already, and that's maybe useful to see. I had now Ask Me Anything, and that was on Reddit. And I'm tweeting as much as I can for a united Europe, for a strong Europe. And here I will now talk about the current situation, the crisis with Russia and the pending war, the third war actually. It's a war since 2014 already, where Russia has invaded Ukraine, first in Crimea, then in Donbass. And now they are the second time in 2021 and again escalating already here in 2022. After the Kazakh riot, we are now in a situation where Russia seriously has attacked Ukraine with a cyber attack in the preparation of a pending invasion and a further invasion. I repeat that Russia is already in Ukraine illegally and has, of course, troops in Donbass and in Crimea, has annexed and is seemingly ready for another strike. That remains to be seen. What I can say now is that we have to work for more European American unity. First of all, obviously, is that the EU joins NATO. But all the other EU neutrals, of which we have 5.5, depending how you want to assess Cyprus, that's of course Austria. Hello Austria, join NATO. Sweden, Finland, Ireland, Malta, and of course Cyprus. So 6 countries in the European Union to join NATO, the EU to join NATO, and obviously also the new member countries, Bosnia, Kosovo, Ukraine, Georgia, to join the European Union. First to get EU potential candidate status, of course, for Ukraine and Georgia, and also for Moldova, and Moldova also to apply for NATO. Additionally, one day after the fall of Vucic, who is a Russian asset, and I made that very clear on many of my tweets. But after the fall of Vucic, there should be also a pro-European Serbia joining NATO, and that's very good. We should also later then try to break out our friends from Azerbaijan out of this deadlock situation in which they are, because we should be also more active in the Southern Caucasus. That's very important direction NATO, the EU should go. And obviously the Ukrainian and Georgian and Moldovan NATO and EU membership on the same basis like Western Germany has joined the European Union and NATO in the 1950s. In 55, obviously, it was the moment where Western Germany has joined NATO, and this was decisive to win the Cold War, the industrial and military and also economic potential of Western Germany added to the defense and to the outperforming factor of the NATO and the EU during the 80s, obviously. And it was also there where the Iron Curtain broke, when the Eastern Germans were running away, and it was so hard to keep a divided Germany in the middle of Europe for the Soviets, and it was very costly, and they bleeded out economically. The same we must repeat in the case of Ukraine. Russia has understood that. We in the West, unfortunately, not so much. So situation is that Russia tries to bring a military solution, a military settlement, by taking more land from Ukraine. I don't think, I hope, I pray that we don't do it. I hope for a reason, and I hope for American leadership, because again, we see very clearly how much that is important in this key moment of crisis, that we have American leadership and that we are ready to engage together with the Americans, that we are more united. To this extent, obviously, what is important is that we have a free trade agreement with the Americans, that the EU joins NATO, and that we have more unity in all our very complex issues. I have raised many of them. The countries that have not recognized Kosovo, like Romania, Greece and Cyprus, Spain, Slovakia, it's an aberration. They should really get going and recognize Kosovo. Same for Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and for Bosnia, obviously. We need to speed up the EU integration of the NATO allies, that is Albania and Macedonia and Montenegro, to be very fast in a kind of membership minus or membership light approach in a sense, but inside politically the European Union, and also to help them faster to develop. Of course, NATO membership for Bosnia and Kosovo very fast, and also to have all EU members in and all future EU members in the OECD, to have the euro fast deployed, and I was now published again in Visegrad Insight. Thanks a lot. With the same talk, that same idea, fast-track adoption of the euro in Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Albania, Macedonia, Bosnia. But all the free sea countries, that was the main thrust of that article, to be in the euro, and that is impressing obviously Putin. So Czech Republic to be in the euro, and Romania obviously fast, Bulgaria is on the way, Croatia is already decided. So things are anyhow developing, but we should also have everybody in OECD. And that's very bad that Romania and Bulgaria are not in. And we should all get all the Balkan countries in OECD, and Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia, and also in Schengen. Obviously, we need to be much faster than we have been in the last long lost decade, and we need to speed up. It's also important to compete globally, and in case Russia attacks, we need to freeze and expel Russia from the United Nations as an aggressor nation, like the Soviet Union was expelled from the League of Nations in 1939 when they attacked Finland. And it's very important also to expel Russia then from the G20, from the Council of Europe, and also from the OECD, and from all international bodies, like also the World Trade Organization, obviously, because Russia is an aggressor nation, again, very blatantly now attacking Ukraine. Then it's basically the status of war, and we have to be ready for that. We have also to freeze the trade, not buy any energy anymore, and boycott Russian products, and not buy any Russian energy anymore, and change our way to do the energy deal in Europe away from this kind of no coal, no coal, no coal, but no Russian coal, and not no nuclear, but no nuclear from Russia in Finland, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in Hungary, in Bulgaria. Close all these contracts, and it cancel the contract with Russian Rosatom for supply and for delivery and funding of these power stations, and transfer that to the Americans or to the Europeans. Framatome, Westinghouse can do that as well. Same is true for coal. Coal can be sourced in Poland, in Kosovo, for example. There is enough coal in Europe for our needs, and if we need more coal, we can buy it from our friends in Australia. We don't need, or Canada, or anywhere in the world, but not from Russia. That's the point, because they attack us, we don't buy any energy anymore of them. And that's very important also to boycott Russia in the other fields. They are doing cyber attacks, so we should somehow build a cyber wall, a cyber firewall against Russian cyber attacks. That's also one of the economic measures. And also, when they really then go full scale to a war, then we have to confiscate all Russian state assets in the European Union, in the US, Canada and the UK. And also then start to confiscate corporate assets. Yeah? So that's what countries at war do. And if they declare war on us or do a war, then we shouldn't repeat the mistake of 2014 when we didn't declare war. That was a big mistake, because there was war and we didn't declare it. And then it was allowed that the airspace over Ukraine was open, and this kind of probably it was an accident, but it was a Russian manufactured accident, because it was a Russian book who killed the MH17 and the 300 passengers of that unfortunate flight on that unfortunate day. But if we would have closed the airspace because we declared basically the status of war in which Europe is since 2014 due to the Russian aggression, not to our will, not to our wishing, but it's them who have set the actions of war, and then we should also name it war, and consequently freeze assets, boycott trade, confiscate assets, and then also to freeze the airspace of Russia for European aviation, and so on, and all the normal measures that countries do when they are at war. Obviously, I don't call for an invasion or any kind of crazy finger. No, we just economically have the consequences of their action. That is war, their action. It's our response is to do what countries at war do economically to each other. That means interdict trade and boycott the products freeze assets and not allow the airspace for each other, and so on and so on and so on. That's quite logical, and that we will do. And that is sanctions in a way, real sanctions, the consequence of war action. And that's, of course, all unfortunate. As an economist, I'm very much against it. But that's the logical of the events Russia has set in motion and is now seemingly ready to escalate. So we need to have more solidarity in the European Union with, of course, Austria joining NATO, Sweden, Finland, and Cyprus, and Malta, and of course Ireland. And there is no historic kind of justification which is valid today in the present security arrangement. Yeah, it's only poor anti-solidarity measures or kind of anti-Americanism or some kind of free riding towards Russian energy, hoping for some advantage from Putin due to the fact that we stay neutral and we are somehow moral neutralizers, moral neutralists. That is very, very bad. Yeah? So we should show solidarity, the Swedish, the Finnish, and everybody else, especially the Austrians, who are so convenient in the center of Europe. We had, of course, the chance to get rid of the Soviets in 1955. That was a good deal back then, but it was already very expensive with $150 million, which we had to pay the Soviets to leave and to accept this neutrality, which we, in a way, didn't want. We wanted to be secure from Russian aggression, and we were at this front line at that years. Now we are, of course, in the middle of free NATO Europe, and that's very good, but it shouldn't lead to complacency. We should also contribute to security, and together with the Irish and the Maltese, the Austrians and the Cypriots are the countries with the least of economic development, military spending. And so that needs to change. We need also to do our fair share, and also the EU itself needs to increase its military capacities as a part of the NATO alliance. That's very logically. I'm also calling for a nuclear deterrent of the European Union, to have one, like basically the French one extended to the whole territory of the European Union, and also co-funded by the European taxpayers, because you need also to contribute and to pay for security. It's not for free, it is costly, but together as a pool of taxpayers of 450 million, we can obviously pool much more than just the French with 67 million, and that needs also to be a contribution, and then it needs to go through the EU budget, and that's very logical. We also have to compete globally with the Russians and with the Chinese, so it's very important to enlarge BRICS and OECD enlargement with India, South Africa, and also Brazil to be in the OECD, the Paris-based organization of Mr. Corman, and to be ready to leave BRICS, because we should make all the efforts that BRICS is only two-country organization, that's Russia and China, and the rest goes into the free market, the Market Democracies Union, the OECD. That's basically the inheritance of the Marshall Fund. Good, I think that's all very logically, and we need also to reform the UN and to freeze Russia as an aggressor state. I think that's also very important. But nevertheless, no matter if Russia now attacks or not, we should all do these measures anyhow. They are long overdue. We have been frozen in a kind of paralysis now since 2014 and achieved just very little in terms of enlargement of all our institutions. And that's actually time to get it done. That's why I do this podcast and I explain all the enlargement, this kind of, I think it's 21 organizations which I have discussed, and which are institutions which all need to be enlarged, completed, from the Regional Cooperation Council to CEFTA to the Energy Community on a Southeastern European basis, including Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and to the European Union from Schengen, OECD, the Euro, etc., to the global level of the World Trade Organization, the UN, and NATO, and all these institutions. So I think it's very logical concept of Pax Europiana, and I ask you for support for this. And this will be also my direction of the upcoming podcasts. I have this audio podcast, I tweet, I write on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'm also very active on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at G. Fechlinger, G. Fechlinger. And there's a lot of tweets on all this as well. My video podcast, my audio podcast, and also my Substack. And now I will also try to have a WordPress presentation and that I will start. That's my New Year's resolution. Maybe also my work is more easier to access by that. And cross fingers, it will all work out fine. And I will now also publish regular podcasts in the winter. I will not travel a lot. I'm here now based in beautiful Upper Austria in the Attersee, and I will keep you posted with a lot of information on Pax Europiana, on peace in Europe, what needs to be done, an economic reform, on structural reform, on institutional reform, and how the European model can really contribute to global peace. What is the way forward? How peace was made after the Second World War with these institutions from EU, NATO and OECD, how they all work and why they are existing. I will try to explain all this, and I will explain that we need them to be open, to be enlarged, to be more active. And the way to Russia and to contain Russia is more unity between the West, but also more openness of the West to basically the rest of the world, because we are competing as well with Russia on the kind of narrative of this conflict. And Russia is absolutely in the wrong. And that should be also very clear to our friends from the southern part of the world and from Africa, from the Americas and from Asia. And they should support us, and we should support them also by trade agreements and by openness of OECD and OECD and all these organizations, and also by very clear UN reform, with, for example, India having a Security Council seat. I talked about all these issues already. You see many of my now 620 video podcasts and 360 audio podcasts, and that's a bit the level. And also my 90,000 tweets, and I will continue to do that. But the most important now for my Austrian friends, it's the presidential year with the elections. I will try to make Austrian NATO membership as present and as active as possible in the media, and bear with me and support wherever you are. When you are not in NATO and you're European, join. If you are somewhere else in the world, please join the OECD and be a global partner of NATO. Let's conclude a free trade agreement. This is the way to make peace. And listen to this podcast. I think I will have every single day one new publication, one new idea, one new project, how to increase security, peace, prosperity in Europe and everywhere where there are peace-loving nations, and how to contain Russia and Serbia. This is basically the idea. And hopefully one day also Russia and Serbia, first Serbia, hopefully already in April, that would be my hope, will join the free world, will remove their autocrats, and will, hopefully be part of the free world. Thanks a lot for listening. More to come from Pax Europiana. Bye.